Yo guys, I'm not exactly sure what happened with this video. I recorded it. There's some weird error going on. I can't airdrop it. I can't send it to myself. I can't do anything with it. So I just have to redo the video again. The downside, you guys had to wait. I have to do this again. Upside, I can probably get through these ideas a lot quicker than 40 minutes, which was the original length of the second part. So just bear with me. I don't know. You guys know I just have all kinds of mishaps happening all the time. And maybe this is what happens when you talk about demons and all that stuff. So probably. Anyway, as I was saying, I don't want you guys to think that Satan is not a name, but it is. It does seem to work more as a title than anything. So we were talking about Belial. I forgot exactly how far into Belial I got, but just a refresher, he's also known as Beelzebub. He also has the prefix Baal in another interpretation of his name, which is Baal-zebub, which is Lord of Flies. Remember, we have Baal, and Baal is also the name of the demon that resides in the seventh order. So this goes into the point of, remember that these devils are taking names from other beings to give themselves more authority. And this is why I talk about false flagging in another video. And it's not so much that I think Tabata is intentionally trying to throw his readers for a loop. It's just more so that we have to understand that there's a lot of confusion when it comes to, there's a lot of room for confusion when it comes to the Tree of Death due to all of this. And again, if I said some of this in the last video, just take it as a refresher. A lot of these guys fell, especially the last devils in this clip, in this Qliphotic tree, for adding a left to their name. And that means that they added a part to their name that gives them authority. And it would make no sense for them to stop, because they've already been punished for it, and why stop there? These are devils. They're here to create confusion and strife. So they're going to keep doing what they did. And this is why you get all of this. Now, to get into the last clip, that is the Thalmael, which are the twin gods, and that holds Moloch and Satan. And you see I have / Lucifer in this. Now, it depends on your source. Satan and Lucifer are usually two separate beings. If you look at just your popular Christian lore, Satan and Lucifer are separate for the most part. However, Lucifer acts in the capacity that Lucifuge Rofocal acts in within this tree. So they do kind of give and take. It stays somewhat balanced. But in this, I do believe Satan is also just more of a title than anything. To get to Moloch, though, when you look up the Qliphotic tree, you're going to find that you get this entire tree. And like I said, below you have some trees that have Lilith at the very top, or Lilith at the second part as the obscene ones, when in all actuality she does rule over both, and it doesn't really matter which one she is in. This one, you're going to find Moloch in there 10 times out of 10, and you will never find Satan on a diagram detailing the Qliphotic tree. Why that is, I'm not completely sure. If I had to guess, it's because Moloch was just there first, and then Lucifer fell. Here's the thing. Moloch is a fallen god, and to get even more into the etymology of this name, you see that a different spelling for this is Melech. And this goes back to Samael, whose demonic name is Adremelech. Okay, so I take this as Samael is his God-given name. Samael is a fallen angel. He was God's angel of death, and he still acts in that capacity within the Qliphoth. And he still actually serves under God in most lore. So it'll be really interesting to see what Tabata ends up doing with this. But then you have Lucifer. That is his God-given name. So to go by Satan wouldn't be completely ridiculous, because, like I said, that can act more as a title than anything else. But these two are the contending gods. And so, as far as I understand, these guys don't see eye to eye. And in fact, there's actually like a meeting. I had the name of the meeting in my head. But this meeting was very interesting for a variety of reasons. One of the big things, though, is that we have Lucifer in this. We have Qliphoth, Belial, and Moloch in this, as well as some characters like Hades and even Cthulhu. Now, this is where things get very, 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 very intriguing, because we start delving into more pantheons within this meeting. And it's interesting because it all goes back to Belial, in a sense, okay? So I'm going to get back into the Satan and Moloch, but for Belial, it is especially interesting because we know that one of the three pillars supporting the Qliphoth is a demon of space, right? And so in this meeting, the three, well, technically four, Moloch, Satan, Belial, and Qliphoth, were all having this meeting, and this was just to decide what the next move for the underworld was going to be. Whether that's going to be overtaking the world of the living, expanding hell, just a variety of other things. What ends up happening is you get this dynamic of where Qliphoth is kind of just wanting to like rule hell himself. He's very selfish. Whereas you have Moloch, who's on a complete warpath against God, and just wants to take down everything God had ever made. While Lucifer is only really in it to destroy mankind. And then you have Belial, who kind of just lays back in the cut. And then when the meeting is adjourned, everyone else goes their own separate ways. But Belial, what he does is he actually ends up creating what we now know as the Qliphoth. He created all of those spaces and the hierarchy itself, and they put it in such a way where it says that he had created new spaces within the underworld, as well as found new dimensions. So, to go back to some of the people that were in this meeting, like Cthulhu, and I believe I forgot his name, but these are Lovecraftian and Greek gods and whatnot. So it's very interesting because Lovecraftian beings are a complete work of fiction, whereas at least some of these guys have mythological background, can be traced back through cultures and whatnot. And some of these Lovecraftian beings have found their way into some popular religions, and Cthulhu being one of them. And we have a few other characters, but my main thing here is that Belial is special in the sense, especially if Tabata takes it this route, that this could be not only the doorway to the underworld, but the doorway to other worlds and other pantheons that could further broaden the whole spectrum of Black Clover and what we're getting. So if Tabata takes it that way, I mean, it's a wrap for all other mangaka. I really don't know who else would be on this level, but we'll see where that goes. So to go back to Moloch and Satan, again, they're contending gods now. Moloch, or Melech rather, used to mean gift, and something else, nicer than what it is now, because now it is sacrifice, and that became that way because Moloch ended up falling from grace, essentially. The methods of worship started to change for the worse, where they had to burn children to gain the recognition of Moloch, to gain the aid of Moloch. So he then fell and became an infernal god, whereas Lucifer then fell later. And in some lore, they have... Actually, I won't even say some. In most lore, these guys actually are not in the same clip. However, they are in the same area, if you will. So take this circle and imagine just another circle behind it of a completely separate clip, but on the same level. That's where Satan is. So it's not so much that they are always just fighting together, but they whether they know the other one exists or not hasn't really been stated anywhere. But yeah, that's pretty much the idea of what's going on with them. This is Thalmael. Now, I want to go back and I want to read some of the things that I have in my translation of the Book of the Red Dragon, which is the Grand Grimoire. So, in the book, this is Lucifer. He looks like a very grumpy old man with just chicken feet here. He looks angry for no reason, like a little bratty child, pouty lips and everything. Looks real lame to me. So, the description, before I do the description, that right there that you see with his name in the circle and the drawing in the middle, that is his sigil. That's his seal. That's the seal of Lucifer. And the description goes as such. The first conjuration in the Grand Grimoire is addressed to Lucifer, prince and master of the rebel angels. The second and third conjurations are also addressed to Lucifer, and he is praised as 100 kingdoms call unto Lucifer. He makes the promise cited into the Grand Grimoire and can thus be interchangeable with Lucifer. Now, it says can be interchangeable with Lucifer, but listen to the next thought. It says, although he is distinguished by citing Lucifer as his prime minister. So he further distinguishes himself from Lucifer, making them completely separate beings. He describes himself thus: the powerful and supreme independent emperor, free and absolute master of all subterranean kingdom, despotic lord in all my jurisdiction, formidable, terrible, very noble, who governs all fortune, all sages, wise, sagacious, fortuitous, and sublime bright character. I am the dominator of Europe and all misfortunes of Asia in particular. So, some key words here, or a key word, was that he uses to describe himself is the independent, powerful, and supreme emperor. Supreme. We have just got this new terminology within Black Clover when describing devils that rule over a clip in the Qliphoth tree, which are Lilith and Nama right now, were supreme devils within the first two clips. So, very interesting that verbiage is in there. And I do wonder if that is purposeful on Tabata's part. But something, just the main point to take out of this is that Lucifer does completely distinguish himself from Lucifer. And as I did say in the first video, that their names are completely different, and that Lucifer is ironically the antithesis of an antithesis, which is Lucifer. He is the opposite of what Lucifer is, where Lucifer is the light bringer. Lucifer is the one who flees from light. And we'll keep going into it because the next part is Lucifer. Now that is one depiction of Lucifer. There's also a more popular one that depicts him with 3 horns, and that's actually the one that you see on the front of this book that I'm reading from. It's actually slightly different than most, but it's pretty much the same point. So that's a seal, and I'm going to go ahead and read the description for you guys. So you have Lucifer is the primary spirit in the Grand Grimoire. He is the one with whom the pact is made and governs the superior and subordinate spirits. He is the infernal prime minister. He has the power that Lucifer grants him over all the wealth and all the treasures of the world. He has under him Baal, Agaris, Marbas, and thousands of demons or spirits who are his subordinates. So, key sentence here is he has the power that Lucifer grants him. So he got his power from Lucifer directly. So again, these are very, very different beings that we cannot confuse with one another. These are like I keep saying, it's just important to realize when we are talking about what devils are going to be in the Qliphoth, because Lucifer Rofocal is the one who does reside over the contracts, as well as with Belphegor. That's also something that you guys will see when looking up the demons within this lore, is that a lot of what they teach, their powers, and what their capacity, how they rule, kind of overlap. And that just comes with the fact that this was not all made at once. You know, they all came at different times, some later than others, some earlier than others. So some of the duties end up overlapping at some points. So like I was saying earlier, how Belphegor does teach men to become invisible and find treasures, but so does Osteroth. However, Belphegor was there before Osteroth. So it's just one of those things. Again, you have to stay flexible with this sort of stuff, and just kind of roll with what you get. So that's why it's very hard to pinpoint exactly what's going on with, you know, some of the things happening in Black Clover, because there's so many ways you can lay this out and it still be on point. But it also gives anyone writing, you know, things like this a lot of leeway to put in their own rendering as to how they want to describe what they're reading. But anyway, I want to keep going into Lucifer Rofocal. There's actually a very specific and separate section for him, and this is describing his name, meaning, and his form. So it's a long read, but listen, it is very, very important, and it has some concepts from Jacob's Ladder in it, and it also answers a question as far as another devil that we were introduced to. So it says, Lucifer Rofocal is, according to the Grimoire, the Prime Minister of the Underworld. The very name is symbolic, since in Latin lucifuge comes the name lux, which is the light, and the verb fugio, or fugio, fleeing, thus designating the one who flees the light. The opposite of the name Lucifer, which means light bearer, as we've already went over. The name Rofocal is the reverse of the name Lucifer, which is Refucal, so they came Rofocal, symbolizing that he is the opposite of Lucifer by his name and surname. The name lucifuge is first found in the 11th century within Michael Sellis's De Operatione Demonium, adding to the hierarchy of demons first found in the Imbliculus and the Neoplatonists. I don't know if I mentioned it in the first video, but Rofocal is also theorized to be a play on another demon's name within the Qliphoth that resides in a pathway, which is Focolore. There's no super big importance behind that specific demon, but yeah, it is theorized that that is also a play on his name. So here's some text from the Grimoire itself that's been translated. He counted off 6 species of demons, and first he mentioned Lilirium 23, speaking in his barbarous vernacular tongue, a name which signifies igneous. This order of demons haunts the air above us, for the entire genus has been expelled from the regions adjacent to the moon, as a profane thing with us would be expelled from a temple, but the second occupies the air contiguous to us, and is called by the proper name aerial. The third is the earthly, the fourth the aqueous and marine, the fifth the subterranean, and the last the lucifugus, which can scarcely be considered sentient beings. Now, they're going to go a little more into depth with the lucifugus thing, just a tad bit more, but understand that they just classified the word lucifugus with a species and not so much a demon's name. And this is something I tried to say in my my video, which I just saw is pretty much 5 views shy of 1,000, which is crazy. But in that video, I do try to explain that lucifugus and any variant of Lucifer is more so just a title than it is a name. So again, very important. Names are important here. To go on, All these species of demons are haters of God and enemies of man, and they say that the aqueous and subterranean are worse than the merely bad, but that the Lucifugus are eminently malicious and mischievous. For these, said he, not merely impair men's intellects by fantasies and illusions, but destroy them with the same alacrity as we would the most savage wild beasts. Now, this is the part where I'm talking about it has some Jacob's Ladder components to this, because remember, man, I always forget it. But, no, I'm going to look it up. I have the computer right here. Hold on. I want to be as accurate as possible for you guys, because this is an interesting subject here. But remember, it's the 4 worlds of the Kabbalah. One-handed typing for the win. So, the 4 worlds are earth, air, water, and fire. Now, remember, just in some of the previous texts, Lucifer says that he is the ruler of the subterranean. And it just says that the subterranean and the aqueous are really like the worst, but then you have the Lucifugus. Now, the Lucifugus is not in either one of these worlds. So this means they are completely unnatural. However, we do have to understand that Lucifer is fallen, so he would fall under one of the 4 worlds. And the 4th world is manifest, and that's Earth. And that, depending, again, a lot of this does depend on your source and whatnot. But Lucifer says that he's the one that resides over the subterranean. So he would be the worst. And then you have the aqueous ones, who are actually the second to last world of the Kabbalah. So it's interesting that they bring in this sort of stuff, and then you can directly relate it to some of the other ideologies within the Kabbalah and all that. But to keep going, the aqueous suffocate in the water. All that approach, that would be the next page. All that approach them, the subterranean and Lucifugus, if they can only insinuate themselves into the lungs of those they meet, seize and choke them, rendering them epileptic and insane. The Grand Grimoire takes pains to indicate that the operator must not agree to the initial demands of Lucifugio Focal to surrender himself to the spirit. So remember, Lucifugio Focal looks over all these contracts. So the point of the Grand Grimoire is so that you can invoke these various spirits, demons, jinn, genie, and I believe even angels. Well, that's the Greater Key of Solomon. But you guys know what I mean. But in order to do all that, you have to summon Lucifugio Focal. This is the one who grants you those other contracts. And I'll kind of get into that a little more as I read through this. So this is an excerpt, a translation of what Lucifugio Focal says. It says, I cannot agree to your demands unless you agree to surrender yourself to me in 20 years to do with your body and soul as I please. So this is the bargain. This is where it starts. So Lucifugio Focal reveals himself to the summoner and says this. And this will go all the way back to the lore of Faust, where instead Lucifugio Focal does not reveal himself to Faust, but it's Mephistopheles. Now, Mephistopheles is correspondent to Astaroth via the fact that Mephistopheles is known as a great Duke of Hell, which Astaroth is, and is also correspondent to Jupiter. And within the Qliphoth and the Tree of Life, each clip and each husk in the Tree of Life is has one planetary correspondence. And for Jupiter, Astaroth is the only one that corresponds to that. So Mephistopheles in that story is actually Astaroth, and the way that he acts towards Faust and what he's able to do with Faust completely fall under what Astaroth does. So we have to remember that in the Legend of Faust, that Astaroth did not want to work in the way that he did. as it says here in this excerpt, that Lucifer wants his body and soul after 20 years to do as he pleases with it. And that is the exact time frame. Maybe not so exact. It's in that range. So it was like 20, 22, or 24 years that Faust had before Astaroth would have to claim his soul and send it to Lucifer. So it was it was around the same time as far as the contract goes. But just to go back into like how Astaroth actually didn't want to do that, he told Faust not to go through with the contract, or else he would get a fate as Astaroth did. But of course, Faust completely ignores the warning. But they do come to a happy medium where they're not going to damn souls that don't deserve it. They will only damn already damned souls. And in some stories, Faust eventually does die in the contract and goes to hell. And in a lot of other stories, Faust lives and overcomes that fate. So it's very interesting. But in that story, Lucifer Qliphoth chose not to reveal himself to Faust, which is interesting. But to go on, he must instead insist on keeping his soul inviolate, and that the spirit must accede to his demands in the names of the most holy. Lucifer Qliphoth ends up obeying the Karsus, which is the one who's summoning, so that he will no longer be beaten by the blasting rod. Now, you'll find things like blasting rod and certain wands. The blasting rod is really just like, it's just a weapon to use when Lucifer, any summoned spirit is being summoned, whatever. They would beat them with this rod, and really just beat them into submission, so that they could get their way without having to make strenuous contracts with these things. So to go on, the Karsus then states his demands. The spirit must appear to him, or to the one who will be in possession of the grimoire. In addition, the Karsus asks for the location of the nearest treasure in exchange for returning a gold coin to Lucifer on the first day of every month. The demon, not wishing to become a slave, accepts on one condition. So he's still bargaining, right? So remember that the first bargain was that he couldn't agree to any of the demands unless the summoner agrees to surrender themselves in 20 years, their body and soul, to do with as he pleases. Now, after the blasting rod, he says, I can't grant you what you ask of me under these conditions, or under any other, if you do not give yourself to me in 50 years to do with your body and soul what I like. So he ups it to make it more attractive. So instead of 20 years, it's 50 long years, to make the summoner go like, okay, that's 50. That's a long ways away, so I can do that. But the point of this, the whole point of this, is to make sure that your body and soul stay safe from Lucifer Qliphoth. So we go on. In an almost story-like fashion, the book explains that the will of the devil is only to possess the sorcerer and to make him a slave. To punish him for his rebellion, the Karsus then plunges the wand into the fire to make the demon suffer. Now, the wand is connected to any spirit that's within this magic circle, so they burn it to, of course, torture and just submit this demon or other spirit into abiding by their rules instead of the other way around. Until he submits, which he does finally end up doing. He then approves the pact and signs his true signature to it. He also promises to deliver the treasure's location under 3 conditions. Keep this secret always, that you are charitable towards the poor, and that you grant me 1 piece of gold or silver on the first day of every month. If you miss this, you will be mine forever. Now, note how that went from 20 years to 50 years to no years. Just give me 1 piece of gold or silver every month. And should they miss that day, then their soul is his. So that kind of grants them forever. Or that can be just 1 month of what they wanted. And then if they forget or choose not to give him the gold or silver that he asked for, then their soul is damned. But it's interesting though, because as I kind of said, that people have invoked these demons over time, and as I kind of said, that some of these guys aren't like as evil as you would think, because one of the conditions Lucifuge asks the person, like, if you're gonna want to use my powers, you need to not only keep this a secret, but you have to be charitable towards the poor. I mean, it's a double-edged sword, but it's nice, but it's also a ploy, right? To be charitable to the poor, while you're asking Lucifuge for these treasures, you have to be sparing enough to at least last yourself one gold coin or one silver coin. Because if you're too charitable, then your soul is his. So it's just kind of like it's a give and take. And so to go on. So the pact with the devil is realized. He has approved it and is subject to the sorcerer, to whom he must now obey without being rebellious. However, should the wizard make the slightest error, the demon will be there to take his body and soul. Such pacts were commonplace in occult writings, from the 1st century tale of Theophilus of Adana, who sold his soul to the devil to retrieve his church offices, and the more contemporary priest of Loudon, Urbain Grandier, who neglected to hide his pacts with the devil while ministering to the Ursuline nuns, leading him to be burned at the stake. The pact of Urbain Grandier, autographed by him in his own blood, can be found in the Bibliothèque Nationale, and appears to be drawn from the Grand Grimoire. At the end of the ritual, the Karsus is everything he had desired. Through God's help, the devil is under his command and delivers access to a treasure, or whatever else the spirit might have been called to deliver. The spirit is then returned to his kingdom. Once the promise of the spirit is made, the Karsus follows him to the treasure. The magician's assistants must remain within the triangle within the magic circle. He is first blocked by a large dog, a gnome, the elemental earth spirit reputed to protect treasures, go figure. The magician brandishes the blasting rod, and the gnome leads him to the treasure. So this just right here could tell us that the earth spirit might have a bigger role than we realize. When the magician arrives at the treasure, he must throw a sheet of parchment over the treasure on which is written the conjuration of the key, while taking a piece as a token of recognition and throwing a coin of his own money, which he will have bitten before to the demon. So if you don't know, they bite coins back in the day just to make sure that the coin is real. If it's not real, it would bend or dent. The sorcerer must go back and forth to the treasure without looking back, even if it seems as if all the mountains of the world will topple over on him. So it's more like a test of fate, really. Faith. Once the Karsus is back in the Kabbalistic circle that protects him, it is time for him to return the spirit to its normal abode, in hell or wherever they may be. Because remember, it's not just demons that can be invoked here, it's other spirits, elementals, genies, jinn, all that stuff. The latter having fulfilled his duty for the moment. The spirit is also reminded to, now this is an excerpt, think about your commitment, because if you miss it for a moment, you can be sure that I will strike you forever with the lightning rod of the great Adonai Elohim, Ariel, and Jehovah. Amen. The sorcerer then thanks the devil for what he did and allows him to return home in peace. He warns the demon that he must withdraw in silence without doing any bad deeds or trying to rebel. In the end, he reminds him of his commitment and threatens him with the power of the blasting rod. And finally, he thanks God for helping him to survive the ritual and bestowing his grace and blessings upon him. So that last part is actually pretty interesting, though, where it says that God is in on this as well. So imagine being a devil, and not only are you being extorted and exploited by humans, but the humans are being helped by God to allow them to do this with nothing in return for the devils. So yeah, they're going to want to take down humans. They're going to want to take down any divine being as well. So this ends up just making all kinds of sense as to why they're so angry and why they're so hell-bent, no pun intended, on, having this behavior, right? But to keep going back, we just went over Lucifero in this story, and I just want you guys to understand my mode of thinking is that why would Tabata use the exact names Lilith and Nama, and then just kind of, you know, say, okay, that's Lucifero, and not actually use Lucifer. And then you have Lucifugus, who we just went over is not actually a name of a demon, but a species of demons they're actually called heliophobic, which means they are afraid of the light. They flee from it, right? So Lucifuge Rofocal would fall under this Lucifugus genus of demons. One other thing I wanted to go over, the 3 infernal principalities of hell, and this is further backed by Nox, but that's what they're called in lore. So the 3 pillars that they introduced are really nothing new as long as you've been on game with the lore. And the 3 are Belial, Lucifuge Rofocal, and Astaroth, and that's in order. Belial is the highest in that hierarchy, where you have Lucifuge as the second and Astaroth as the last. Okay, so it makes sense as to why each one of them are where they are. So if you look at where Belial is, just note that he's got 1 and 2 clips below him, not to mention that he actually rules over the doorway to hell. So that's really 4 regions of hell that he rules. And then you go to Astaroth here in the 4th, where he really only rules over the 1. And we're just talking about just going straight up and down. We could also attribute Belial to the rest of the middle, because he does control Dot, and through Dot, there are 3 others. So Belial actually rules over 5 regions of the Qliphoth, whereas Astaroth only rules over 1, and 2, including his own. And then you have Lucifuge Rofocal, who rules over his own plus 2 more over here on the left side. So it just makes sense as to why it goes in that order. So we have everything at this point, and how far I'm thinking. So the 3 infernal principalities of hell will match the 3 pillars. And remember, this is Astaroth. That's 1 infernal principality. The next would be Lucifuge Rofocal and the Sartariel. The last pillar would be Belial, and they all support the twin gods. So the twin gods are not included within these pillars. They are what is being held up by the pillars. So I think that is important to understand. So again, main takeaways. I think it's important to understand that Lucifero is in the Sartariel, and even in Nox's diagram of the Qliphoth, the Sartariel is there. It's off to the right, since it's double mirrored. Yeah, and it's higher up. It's right below the seal. And then you have Belial off to the left, who is lower, and then you have the twin gods all the way at the bottom. So they're worried about Lucifero, but I think the bigger things to worry about are Belial, who is yet to be named in this, who I do believe is Xenon's devil, who would be the stronger one. And then we have the twin gods, who would be stronger, and they're all coming out on the same day. So it's more to worry about than just Lucifero, and I think these other devils have laid low, possibly just for the reason because if Lucifer Rofocal is the one they're worried about, it's because he's trying to become the ruler. He wants to rule over everything. Not to say that the other devils don't, but if they have their name out there and what they're capable of, people are going to try their best to keep them out of the world of the living for sure. Not to say that they're not trying to do this with Lucifero, But just understand that he is not the be-all end-all here. He is not even in the top 3. He is actually in the top 5, top 4. Because remember, in the last clip, you have 2 devils, Satan and Lucifer, or Satan and Moloch. So he's not by any means the be-all end-all here. And I guess while I'm here, I drew the pathways in the second video, in the original video. I think I explained in the beginning, but if I didn't, there's 22 of them, which means there are 22 devils that reside in those pathways, and it's a very big deal as far as ascending and descending either tree. And the other tree would have angels, of course. Even though this most recent chapter, Liabe says that he was in the first clip, or within the first seal at least, with Lilith and Nama as the Supreme Devils, I'm still standing by my theory that he does belong to the Thalmael as Satan, just because, number one, Satan is an air elemental. Well, Lucifer is an air elemental. And number two, just think about, just story-wise, we have Liabe saying, like, yeah, I was in that first seal with Lilith and Nama, and I got yeeted, and now they're dead, and there's no other story to that. Like, that's such a shallow story, and that's not like Tabata at all. So I'm very, very sure that Liabe's story is not just as simple as that. There really can't be as simple as that. So I'm thinking that the bleach theory that I have on here applies, and that could be why Liabe remembers that he was just in within that first seal, because that was the last one. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I suggest going back to the videos, and I essentially talk about, if you've seen Bleach, how the Hollows ascend into Vastal Lords, and what they have to do. It takes time and a lot of effort and a lot of willpower to ascend, and this is kind of a reversed ascension, where Liabe, in my theory, starts within the Thalmael at the very bottom, but as he keeps dying, he keeps ascending each seal. Again, that's not what this is for. I'm really just in it to give you guys the lore behind what's going on. But very interesting stuff. I don't think I went over the Black Sun of Tigirian, but just in short, as I was saying, how each of the husks, whether that be on the Tree of Life or the Tree of Death, is attributed to a planet. The center spot is always attributed to the sun. Now, for Belphegor's case, this is actually the Black Sun. And this is where I get my theory that Dante has Belphegor, because his chest, as you see him get more and more towards 100%, and at 100%, reflects less of the gravity symbol and more of the Black Sun, which is the symbol that you also see on the Shadow Palace. And what's cool is that these religious thoughts and ideas that exist, that you see laid out in front of you, are also scientific ideologies as well. A lot of people back in the day combined pretty much everything to make the world make more sense. So this was one of the more groundbreaking models, where this is a heliocentric model, where the sun is in the middle and everything else revolves around it, as opposed to having an Earth revolving model, right? Where a lot of people way back in the day, especially when this was made, thought that everything revolved around the Earth. So this is just groundbreaking in a lot of different ways, and the way this just flows in and out of other lore almost seamlessly just makes it seem right. I don't know. It's very weird. But yeah, that's kind of all I got for you guys. I'm hoping this uploads correctly this time. It should. I don't know what's going on, and I apologize for the long wait. I thought it'd be right after the original upload, so this should upload correctly. But you guys let me know what you think about this. If you found it interesting, informative, please let me know. If you have any other questions, let me know in the comment section below or on Twitter. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. This has been Jack OATz to Go. You either know or it's Magna Season. It's been Jack OATz to Go. You either know or you don't.